Disheveled, charmed Sophia Bennett suppressed another yawn as she filled out the last chart of the day. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where she worked as the head veterinarian, had been chaotic since dawn. 3 orphaned fox kits. Det. Hawk, in an emergency surgery on a deer hit by a car, had left her running on fumes and coffee. Dr. Bennett, don't forget your brother's setting you up tonight. Her assistant Olivia called out, peering around the doorframe with a mischievous smile. Sophia groaned, dropping her head into her hands. Please tell me you're joking. That's tomorrow, right? Nope, definitely tonight. 8 o'clock, he said. Quick glance at her watch confirmed her worst fear. 7:15 p.m. She'd never make it home. Shower and change in time. Her auburn hair was hastily pulled into a messy bun, and her scrubs bore evidence of the day's demanding work. Call Daniel and cancel, Sophia pleaded, already reaching for her phone. Your brother specifically said, and I quote, if she tries to bail, tell her I'll bring Mom into this. Olivia grinned. He seemed pretty determined to make this happen. Resigned to her fate, Sophia rushed home to her small cottage on the edge of town. The modest house, surrounded by towering pines and visited by the very wildlife she dedicated her life to healing, was her sanctuary. Tonight, however, it felt like a trap as she hurriedly tried to make herself presentable. A quick shower removed the antiseptic smell of the clinic, but there was no time for makeup or styling her hair. Sophia threw on her most comfortable loungewear soft flannel pants with little hedgehogs printed on them and an oversized university sweatshirt with a faded logo. She'd just tell this mystery man she wasn't feeling well and reschedule. Daniel would understand eventually. The doorbell rang precisely at 8 p.m., catching Sophia mid-panic. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door, apology ready on her lips. The man standing on her porch was not what she expected. Tall and striking with dark hair and eyes that seemed to assess everything in seconds, he wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Recognition dawned slowly. Julian Mercer. The tech innovator whose face graced business magazines and whose company, Helios Tech, was revolutionizing renewable energy storage. You must be Sophia, he said, his voice smooth and confident. Daniels told me a lot about you. Sophia stood frozen, acutely aware of her hedgehog pajamas and damp hair. You're early, she stammered, then immediately regretted it. I mean, no, you're right on time. I'm just ... not ready. A flicker of amusement crossed Julian's face. Bad day. You have no idea, she sighed, stepping back to let him in. Look, I'm really sorry about this. We had an emergency with a red-tailed hawk and I completely forgot about tonight. I understand if you want to reschedule. Julian loosened his tie as he stepped inside, taking in the modest living room with its overflowing bookshelves and comfortable, well-worn furniture. Actually, he said, setting down a bottle of wine he'd brought, this might be the most honest first date I've had in years. Sophia blinked, uncertain if he was mocking her. I mean it, Julian continued, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. Most people I meet have researched me extensively and present exactly what they think I want to see. You clearly had no idea who I was until just now. Sophia couldn't help but laugh. I did recognize you, but only because your face was on the cover of my brother's tech magazine last month. Something about revolutionary battery storage. Julian's expression softened with genuine surprise. And yet you didn't cancel or suddenly find time to change. I was about to cancel, Sophia admitted, gesturing to her outfit. But not because of who you are. Just because of ... She motioned to herself. All this. I find all this refreshingly real, Julian said, rolling up his sleeves. So, Dr. Bennett, wildlife veterinarian extraordinaire, do you have any food in this cottage of yours? I'm starving, and I'd much rather hear about your hawk emergency than sit in another stuffy restaurant pretending to be impressed with someone's investment portfolio. The first time that evening, Sophia smiled without reservation. I make a mean grilled cheese sandwich. Perfect, Julian replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. And please, call me Julian. Mr. Mercer is what people call me when they want something. As Sophia led him to her small kitchen, she couldn't help but wonder if her disaster of a day might have accidentally led to something unexpected, a genuine connection with someone who seemed to value authenticity over appearance. The evening had only just begun. I'll continue with parts 2 to 5 of the story. It's making them slightly longer than the first part. Part 2. Worlds apart, Sophia's tiny kitchen had never hosted someone like Julian Mercer before. As she gathered cheese, bread, and her secret ingredient thinly, sliced green apples for their impromptu dinner, Julian rolled up his expensive shirt sleeves and insisted on helping. "I'll have you know, I'm not completely useless in a kitchen," he said, accepting the cutting board she handed him. "I can chop things without losing any fingers." "Impressive resume," Sophia teased, feeling oddly comfortable despite the absurdity of the situation. "Most tech billionaires I know can't say the same. You know many tech billionaires in hedgehog pajamas? You'd be surprised what we discuss at the annual Wildlife Veterinarian Gala," she replied, watching him methodically slice apples with unexpected precision. "Though I admit you're my first in-home billionaire experience." As they worked side by side, Julian shared stories of growing up in a modest household before his innovation in energy storage technology catapulted him into wealth. His passion when discussing sustainable energy was genuine, his eyes lighting up as he explained complex concepts in accessible terms. "Enough about me," he said finally, accepting the grilled cheese sandwich she placed before him. "Tell me about your patients today. What happened with the hawk?" To Sophia's surprise, Julian listened intently as she described the injured raptor, asking intelligent questions about rehabilitation techniques and release protocols. He didn't flinch when she detailed the surgery she'd performed or seemed bored by her passionate tangents about conservation. "You really love what you do," he observed after she finished explaining her wildlife rehabilitation program. "I can't imagine doing anything else," Sophia admitted. "Though the pay is abysmal and the hours are worse. My brother thinks I'm crazy to turn down offers from prestigious veterinary hospitals in the city." Julian studied her thoughtfully. "But those fancy hospitals don't have patients who truly need you." The simple observation struck her and understood something fundamental about her without her having to explain it. Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they moved to her small living room. Julian loosened his tie completely, and Sophia tucked her feet beneath her on the sofa, the formality of a traditional first date, long forgotten. "I should warn you," Julian said as midnight approached, "I have a board meeting tomorrow morning that several shareholders are flying in for. I should probably go." Disappointment flickered through Sophia. Of course, didn't realize how late it had gotten. "This wasn't at all what I expected," Julian admitted, standing reluctantly. "When your brother described his brilliant but workaholic sister, I pictured another networking opportunity, not a woman in hedgehog pajamas making you grilled cheese." His laugh was genuine. Exactly. It was refreshing. At her door, Julian hesitated. "I'd like to see you again, Sophia. Perhaps somewhere between your world and mine. I'd like that," she replied, surprised by how much she meant it. 2 days later, Sophia found herself climbing into Julian's sleek electric car. Dressed in her one nice outfit, a simple sundress she reserved for rare special occasions, he drove them not to an exclusive restaurant, as she'd feared, but to a hidden botanical garden, where they had a private tour of endangered plant species being cultivated for reintroduction to the wild. "I thought you might appreciate the conservation angle," Julian explained, as they walked among rare flowering plants, his hand occasionally brushing against hers. "Plus, I figured there'd be less chance of running into business associates who'd interrupt us every 5 minutes. Their third date involved Julian joining Sophia for a rehabilitation release of the hawk she'd treated. Standing beside her in jeans and a casual shirtan outfit she suspected was new but deliberately understated. He watched with genuine emotion as the healed raptor soared into the sky. "That's why you do it," he said softly. Not a question, but a realization. By their 5th date, photos began appearing online. The elusive tech mogul Julian Mercer spotted with an unknown woman at a conservation fundraiser. Sophia had felt out of place among the wealthy donors until Julian introduced her to several environmental scientists whose research he funded. In their company, she found her voice, passionately discussing wildlife protection until she forgot about her second-hand dress and sensible shoes. Later that evening, in the privacy of his car, Julian had kissed her for the first time. The chemistry between them was undeniable, a connection that transcended their different worlds. "I don't care what anyone thinks," he whispered against her lips. "You're the most fascinating person I've ever met." But as Sophia drove home alone to her small cottage, doubts crept in. Their worlds couldn't be more different. She rescued injured wildlife and lived paycheck to paycheck. He moved in circles of influence and wealth she could barely comprehend. How? Long before the novelty of her authenticity wore off, and he realized she would never truly fit into his world. Gossip and doubts, the headline glared from Sophia's phone screen. Julian Mercer's new romance, strategic move or genuine affection. The accompanying article speculated that Julian's sudden interest in wildlife conservation, evidenced by his recent substantial donation to the rehabilitation center, was either a clever publicity move for Helios, Tech's environmental image, or influenced by his relationship with the unknown veterinarian. Sophia tossed her phone aside, trying to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. For 2 months, she and Julian had carefully navigated their growing relationship, finding unexpected harmony despite their different lifestyles. But public scrutiny was intensifying as their connection became impossible to hide. "You're scowling at your phone again," observed Olivia, dropping a stack of medical charts on Sophia's desk. "Another article? They're calling me his wildlife warrior girlfriend?" "No," Sophia sighed. "As if I'm some kind of strategic accessory he acquired along with his electric car." "The donation he made will fund our rehabilitation program for 3 years," Olivia pointed out. Who cares what they write? But Sophia did care, especially when donors began visiting the center specifically to meet Julian Mercer's girlfriend. Her work, her credentials, her passion, overshadowed by her relationship. That evening, Julian arrived at her cottage, looking unusually tired. His normally immaculate appearance showed signs of strain, his hair slightly disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. "Board meeting ran long," he explained, accepting the tea she offered. "Our chief financial officer thinks my recent distractions are affecting company decisions." Sorry. He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Apparently, dating a wildlife veterinarian instead of a fellow CEO or celebrity is raising questions about my judgment. Sophia's heart sank. "Julian, if this is causing problems—" "No," he interrupted firmly. "Don't even suggest it. Thomas has been looking for reasons to question my leadership since I redirected funds from shareholder dividends to research and development. You're just a convenient target." They settled into her comfortable sofa, Julian's arm pulling her close as they discussed their days. These quiet evenings had become their sanctuary. No pretenses, no expectations, just genuine connection. Tonight, tension lingered beneath their conversation. "I'm taking you somewhere special this weekend," Julian announced suddenly. "Pack for 3 days. Casual clothes only." "Julian, I can't just leave the center for 3 days. We have the Fox. Kit's approaching release age, and I've already spoken with Dr. Winters. He's covering for you." Julian's expression softened at her surprise. "Sophia, you haven't taken a single day off since we met. Even your brother agrees you need a break. You spoke to Daniel too? Anyone else you've consulted about my workaholic tendencies?" Julian laughed, the tension finally breaking. "Only Olivia, but she was particularly enthusiastic about forcing you to take vacation days. The betrayal of her closest confidants should have annoyed her." But Sophia found herself touched by Julian's thoughtfulness. Friday afternoon found them driving along coastal roads in Julian's least ostentatious vehicle, still luxurious by Sophia's standards, but not the type to draw attention. They arrived at a secluded property overlooking the ocean. A modern structure of glass and sustainable materials that blended harmoniously with the surrounding landscape. "My personal retreat," Julian explained as he carried their bags inside. "No staff, no assistants, no unexpected business calls, just us." The simplicity of the house surprised her, beautiful but unfussy. With expansive windows framing breathtaking views of the coastline and surrounding wilderness, an entire wall of glass in the living area retracted, opening the space to a deck that seemed to float above the bluffs. "This is where you come to escape?" Sophia asked, watching waves crash against rocks below. "It It's the only property I own that truly feels like mine, Julian admitted, standing behind her with his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. Not chosen by designers or purchased for its investment potential. I designed it myself. That evening, as they prepared dinner together in the open kitchen, Julian seemed to shed layers of the businessman persona he maintained in public. His laughter came easier, his movements less measured. This version of Julian belonged only to her, relaxed, playful, vulnerable. Later, wrapped in a blanket on the deck beneath stars undimmed by city lights, Julian held her close against the ocean breeze. I've never brought anyone here before, he confessed quietly. This place has always been just for me. Sophia turned in his arms to study his face. Why me? The question had been building within her for months. Why her, when he could have anyone? When sophisticated, polished women from his world would understand his life, his pressures, his obligations in ways she never could. Julian considered her question with characteristic thoughtfulness. Because you're the first person who made me feel like Julian, not Julian Mercer of Helios Tech. Because you care more about injured hawks than my net worth. Because when I'm with you, all the noise fades away, and I remember why I started this journey in the first place. His kiss tasted of truth and promise, but as Sophia surrendered to the moment, a whisper of doubt remained. Could something this precious survive when their worlds were determined to pull them apart? Breaking Point, the photograph dominated every business news site and gossip blog Delane at a charity gala. Smiling politely as a stunning woman in a designer gown leaned intimately close to whisper something in his ear. Suggestive to outright scandalous, Mercer moving on. Tech Titans wildlife fling over. Julian and Victoria. Power couple reuniting. Sophia stared at her phone screen, stomach churning. Victoria Harrington, internationally renowned environmental lawyer, daughter of a senator, and Julian's ex-girlfriend from 3 years ago. Their former relationship had been extensively covered by the media. Too beautiful. Powerful people, united by ambition and shared social circles. He would have told me if he was attending the gala with her, Sophia muttered to herself, closing. The article, Julian, was in New York for business meetings. The charity event had been a last-minute addition to his schedule. He'd texted her about it yesterday, a quick message explaining. He needed to make an appearance to support a colleague. No mention of Victoria. Sophia tried to focus on her work. But the image haunted her. They looked right together, both polished. Sophisticated, camera-ready. Nothing like the photos of Julian with her, where he always seemed to be consciously dressing down to match her more casual style. You're being ridiculous, she told herself firmly. We can stand next to a beautiful woman without it meaning anything. But doubt, once seated, grew quickly. 5 months into their relationship, the novelty must be wearing thin. The commute. Between their worlds, initially exciting, now required constant navigation. Julian's business associates had stopped hiding their disapproval of his inappropriate relationship. Meanwhile, Sophia's colleagues sometimes treated her differently, as though her connection to wealth somehow diminished her dedication to their cause. When Julian returned the following evening, his unexpected arrival at her cottage should have been a pleasant surprise. Instead, Sophia's greeting felt strained, her smile not reaching her eyes. What's wrong? He asked immediately, setting down his overnight bag. Even after a cross-country flight, he looked frustratingly perfect-tailored. Casual wear that probably costs more than her monthly rent. Nothing, she lied, busying herself with making tea. Just tired. Busy day at the center. Julian studied her with the same intensity he brought to complex problems. Sophia, talk to me. The gentle request cracked her resolve. I saw the photos. She admitted, voice smaller than intended. You and Victoria. At the gala, understanding dawned in his eyes. Victoria was representing her law firm. We happened to be seated at the same table. You didn't mention she would be there, 'cause it wasn't relevant, Julian replied, confusion evident. She's a colleague now, nothing more. A colleague who fits perfectly into your world, Sophia couldn't stop herself from saying. Unlike me. Julian's expression hardened slightly. Is that what this is about? You think I'm embarrassed by you, aren't you? Just a little. The insecurity she'd battled for months finally surfaced. Julian, be honest. When you're in those boardrooms, Or at those galas, don't you ever wish I was more like the women you used to date? Someone who understands your world, who doesn't wear hedgehog pajamas and get excited about hawk regurgitation. That's absurd, Julian said, his voice clipped. I've never given you any reason to think that. You don't have to. The whole world is happy to remind me. Sophia's voice cracked. Do you know what it's like reading those articles? Seeing the comments speculating about when you'll get tired of your charity case and return to dating in your league? Since when do you care what strangers think? Julian demanded, genuine hurt crossing his features. I thought that's what made us work, that neither of us cared about appearances. It's easy not to care about appearances when you naturally fit in everywhere. The words burst from Sophia with unexpected force. You walk into my world and everyone thinks you're wonderfully down to earth. I walk into yours and everyone wonders what you're doing with me. Julian ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. This isn't like you, Sophia. Something else must have happened. The understanding in his voice only fueled her insecurity. I overheard your phone call yesterday, she admitted. With Thomas, Julian went still. What exactly did you hear? Enough. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, said your rustic romance was becoming a liability. That board members were questioning your judgment. That Victoria would be at the gala, and it would be an excellent opportunity to reconnect with someone more suitable. And you think I agree with him? Julian's voice had gone dangerously quiet. I think eventually you'll have to, Sophia whispered. Your company is changing the world, Julian. Your work matters too much to jeopardize it. This. For us, you mean? Julian's expression closed. Off, the business mask slipping into place. You've decided our relationship isn't worth fighting for? It's exactly what you're saying. Julian picked up his bag. You're at half a conversation and decided to write the ending yourself. For someone who claims to know the real me, you have remarkably little faith in who that person is. The silence that followed his departure was deafening. Sophia sank onto her sofa, tears finally falling. She'd handled it all wrong, letting insecurity override reason. But wasn't the outcome inevitable? Their worlds were simply too different. Her phone chimed with a message from Julian. When you're ready to trust what we have instead of what others say about it, call me. Sophia stared at the screen, wondering if she'd just lost something irreplaceable. True reflections, 3 weeks of silence, stretched between them like an uncrossable chasm. Sophia threw herself into her work, extending her already long hours until Olivia threatened to lock her out of the rehabilitation center. This is not healthy. Her assistant insisted one evening, physically blocking Sophia from returning to an examination room. Go home, take a shower, eat something that isn't from the vending machine. I'm fine, Sophia protested weakly. You haven't mentioned his name once since whatever happened between you, Olivia observed. That doesn't mean you're not thinking about him every minute. Sophia had no defense against this truth. Julian occupied her thoughts constantly his laugh, his thoughtfulness, the way he truly saw her when others merely looked. Pride and fear kept her from reaching out, though she'd drafted countless messages she'd never sent. The Wildlife Center had flourished thanks to Julian's donation, allowing them to expand their facilities and hire additional staff. Every improvement reminded Sophia of his genuine interest in her work, not a publicity stunt, as the media had suggested, but a reflection of his respect for her passion. On the 24th day of their separation, Sophia arrived at the center. To find unusual activity in the parking lot, delivery trucks stood open, workers unloading large wooden crates under Olivia's excited supervision. What's happening? Sophia asked, approaching cautiously. Olivia's grin was suspicious. Remember that specialized rehabilitation equipment we could never afford? The kind used at the national centers? Yes, but all here, along with building materials for the new recovery habitats we designed last year. Olivia handed Sophia an envelope. This came with everything. The envelope contained architectural plans, professional renderings of expanded facilities that perfectly matched the Dream Center. Sophia had once described to Julian during a late-night conversation. No note accompanied the drawings, but she recognized his influence in the thoughtful details. He did this? Sophia whispered. The donation came through an anonymous foundation, Olivia replied with a knowing smile. Very anonymous. definitely not traceable to anyone specific. Sophia spent the day in a daze, examining the equipment that represented everything she'd wished for, but never expected to have. Julian had truly listened to her passionate ramblings about ideal rehabilitation protocols and remembered every detail. As evening approached, Olivia nudged her toward the door. "There's a car waiting for you outside." "I didn't call for, just go," Olivia insisted. "Trust me this once." The sleek vehicle wasn't Julian's, but a hired car with a driver, who simply said, "Mr. Mercer requested your presence, Dr. Bennett." Too curious to refuse, Sophia allowed herself to be driven along familiar coastal roads to Julian's private retreat. The house stood illuminated against the darkening sky. But Julian wasn't waiting inside as she'd expected. Instead, the driver directed her to follow a path of softly glowing lanterns leading down toward the bluffs. Julian stood alone on a viewing platform overlooking the ocean, silhouetted against the sunset. He turned as she approached, his expression carefully neutral. "Thank you for coming," he said formally. "I wasn't sure you would." The Wildlife Center expansion, Sophia began, finding it difficult to organize her thoughts. "Julian, it's too much." "It's not enough," he countered. "Not nearly enough to show you what you're worth to the animals you save, to the conservation cause. To me?" Sophia struggled to maintain her composure. "I saw the announcement about Thomas stepping down as CFO. Julian's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Yes, well, the board and I had a fundamental disagreement about priorities." "You fired your CFO because of me?" Alarm colored her voice. "I replaced an executive who didn't share the company's values," Julian corrected. "His comments about you were merely the final evidence of a problematic pattern." He stepped closer, his professional demeanor softening. "Sophia, these weeks without you have been illuminating. I realized something I should have told you months ago." The vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. "What?" "My life before you was perfectly curated but hollow. I had everything except what matters most, someone who challenges me to be better, who reminds me why I started Helios Tech in the first place. Not for wealth or status, but to make a meaningful difference." Julian took her hands in his. "Never fit into those glossy social circles any more than you do. I just became better at pretending. With you, for the first time, I don't have to pretend." Tears threatened as Sophia absorbed his words. "I was so afraid of not being enough for your world that I nearly pushed you away. You are my world," Julian said simply. "The rest is just scenery." He reached into his pocket and withdrew not a ring, as she momentarily feared, but a small copper key. "This is yours, whether you use it tomorrow or a year from now. This place has always been where I felt most authentic. I understand why it was waiting for you." Sophia closed her fingers around the key, its weight symbolic of something far more significant than access to a house. "I'm sorry I didn't trust what we have. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear enough." Julian's hands framed her face gently. "From that first night when you opened your door in hedgehog pajamas, I was yours. The real question was always whether I deserved you not. The other way around?" As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, they stood together at the edge of the ocean. Two people from different worlds who had found something rare and precious in each other. Their path forward wouldn't be without challenges, but they would face them together, authentic and unwavering. "Take me home," Sophia whispered against his lips. Julian smiled, understanding perfectly. "Which home, yours or ours?" "Wherever we're together," she answered. "That's home enough for me." In the growing darkness, with the rhythm of waves below and stars emerging above, they began again, this time without pretense or doubt, but with the certainty that came from seeing and being truly seen.